Good morning, everyone. I'm very delighted to introduce Dr. Etienne van der Walt. He is an accomplished neurologist and expert in applied behavioral neuroscience. With over 14 years in clinical neurology, Etienne co-founded Neurozone, where he applies cutting-edge brain science and analytics in enhanced human capacity and performance. He's also the co-founder of Amazing Brains, dedicated to the brain development in young children. For all those with kids, very interesting. Known for simplifying complex concepts, Etienne's insights help leaders and teams unlock resilience and high performance. So Etienne, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'll...
Thanks, Tammy. Can everybody hear me properly? Is that all good?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm speaking on my phone here, which is fine. Tammy is going to share the slides, so I will just ask Tammy for the next slide and so forth. But just before we start, maybe just a very quick, before we start the slides, we're going to be done by the hour. Because, you know, we can talk about the brain in 10 minutes, in 45 minutes, in hours and in days, and we'll never be done anyway. So what I'm going to try to do is to just give you a bit of an understanding of this incredible brain-body system, but actually how it works for us to ensure that you unlock high performance and high performance readiness. Because we are at the beginning of this year, we've got a lot of things that's positive waves coming our way. We already experienced this, the hype of a potential great year in South Africa. And I really want to share with you a number of nuggets that you can use. And of course, some of these you know very well. But I hope that it's going to give you an interesting lens into it from a brain-body system perspective, which of course, a fresh lens on an old concept is always very valuable. Remember that you and I are part of a very successful species. I often think we're just too successful, but a very successful species. We are extremely well at complex adaptation. We are good at actually surviving and thriving in life as a species, as a whole. And I think it's worthwhile for us to understand it as leaders. How can we plug into this process and optimize it, especially in the world of technology today? So let me first of all go to the next slide. This is an interesting and important slide. This is an axis that you and I continuously spiral along. We spiral up and down this axis from dysfunction to function. And then, of course, to optimization and high performance using our skill sets and competencies at the top there. Or we are going to dysfunction and eventually have brain-body system implosion. Dysfunction doesn't mean that you develop a cancer or you develop a heart disease or something that a doctor can treat. It means that you go into an inflammatory state where your whole system, because it's chronically stressed, starts to become inflamed without you experiencing the pain, except feeling overwhelmed, not sleeping well, and actually just having stress over a long period of time. Yes, we all feel overwhelmed from time to time, but that doesn't mean that you have chronic stress. It's a process that continues over a long period of time, and you seemingly just cannot overcome your challenges. That, of course, is what is depicted here in the red. Now, you and I continuously in life can go down and up, as I said again. What we want to, and if you look at the next slide, what we want to focus on today is actually that top bit, the skill set, competencies, and your brain-body system optimized to ensure that you can utilize your skill set and competencies as well as possible, but you can also actually enhance your skill set and your competencies with that, because it's a wonderful system that continues to work, right? So the better we are high performance ready, the better we actually learn, the better we build our skills, and it just spirals upwards and upwards. And this is what you want to achieve. So you can see there on the far right, the Neurozone system, the system that I'm going to share with you, and the nuggets, definitely has a lot to say for well-being at the level just above dysfunction. But if you are actually doing this well, you spiral into high performance. And you'll see that the capacity that actually drives us from a brain-body system perspective is resilience. Now, very quickly, resilience is not tenacity. It is not grit. It is not persistence. It is not discipline. All of those qualities are important qualities that we need in our lives. But resilience is a deep, innate neurobiological capacity. It's the capacity to solve problems, to overcome challenges with our knowledge, our skills, our expertise, our experience, and then to learn and grow through that so that we can continue to overcome challenges that are even greater in the future. And this is what actually leads to complex adaptation. So resilience effectively ensure that you and I are here and that our ancestors did not actually become extinct. So this is the capacity we're talking about. And this capacity can grow. You can grow your resilience. And you can also, unfortunately, actually have diminished resilience if you do the wrong things. And of course, you always want to stay within that challenge zone where you can grow your resilience and not become complacent, because that also leads to chronic stress. Studies have shown this, right? And it makes a lot of sense. So you and I want to be in that state where we continuously are challenged, not above our means, but definitely are stretched so we can grow, develop through adversities and challenges. If we don't have that, we go into chronic stress. If we go over that, we also have chronic stress. So effectively, death waits on both sides. You want to be in that space where you can be that high performer, continuously grow, and that's what 2025, I think, should bring for us. So let's actually look at this capacity called resilience. If you want to increase that resilience capacity so that you can be challenged and actually overcome challenges that are greater this year, then we actually have to pay attention to the next set of nuggets. Let me first just go to the next slide and share with you one of the reasons. There are a number of reasons. The world is a complex place. One of the reasons we are being challenged so much in this world today, as you know, is the speed of tech. What you can see there is the so-called computational capacity of the fastest supercomputers. And they did these so-called floating point operations. They said, how many floating point operations did the fastest supercomputer make in a second in these different, over the years? Now, that's floating operations is just a plus, a minus, or a multiplications or divisions. That's it. That's all. Okay. So look at this. In 2015, what you see in 2015 is 33 million. And see where things are on from 2015. We don't even have 2023, 2024 on this one yet. It's an incredibly rapid, accelerated pace at which technology is exploding. And of course, I don't have to tell you that, so everybody knows this. What that brings, of course, to you and me is a great challenge. Let's have a look at the next slide, and you'll see that there's a great challenge for you and me to remain on that curve of change. Remember that we are actually have got this wonderful archaic system that has great flexibility. So I say archaic because some of it is actually quite archaic and static, and others are very dynamic. You and I are actually able to adapt to change, and to change that actually happens quicker to a certain degree. But then when it goes into this exponential curve, you and I cannot do it ourselves anymore. So technology and the speed of change has actually sped up so much that it overrides your and my individual resilience capacity, you see, that capacity of overcoming challenges continuously. So what we see today is that the world is burning out at a rapid rate. And burnout is because people fall off that curve of rapid accelerated change, and they go out of this so-called relaxed physiological state. I'll say a bit more about that, because the resilience that they have is not enough. So what do we need? Well, we need to plug in. You and I need to do it together. Let me just go back one slide again and just say one more thing about the that important curve. Thanks a lot, Tammy. You'll see that baseline relaxed physiological state, what is that? Is a critical state that you and I want to be in. In fact, when I was still a student, I learned that, you know, the purpose of the body is just to stay alive, keep us alive. The brain is a mothership, keeps us alive. We know today that the purpose of the brain and the whole connectedness with everything else in the body, through the vagus nerve, which is the wandering nerve, and all these other nerves connected together, this whole brain-body system is all about keeping us safe, have a sense of we are safe, and we have enough, and that puts us in what we call a baseline relaxed physiological state. It's not a state of apathy. It is not a state where you can be lazy and just hang around. It's a state of silent alertness. This is the state. It's a physiological state, right? where you are ready to perform at your best. So it's a state where your heart rate is low, your blood pressure is down, your metabolism is proper, and your immune system is continuously actually clearing up all the toxins. It actually removes the cells that are dead and those that should die, the cancer cells, and it actually repairs some of the cells that it can repair. It's all an immune system that's continuously working. Can you see how important this state is? If you don't have this state for a long time, which is called chronic stress, you actually go into pro-inflammation. That immune system starts to work against you, but you also have got a state physiologically where the brain is not really as ready to perform at its best. So you really need to be in that baseline relaxed physiological state, and we want to stay on that curve of change, and the way to do it is together. But I'm going to actually share with you how wonderful the system works to do that. Okay, we're ready now for the nuggets. Let's get into the nuggets. Oh, I still have something to say. Check this out. Isn't this incredible? Business to the brain. Here is a definition for you that we've, over the last decade, refined with many leaders. It's always us, it's we. We use our knowledge, our skills, our expertise, and experience to allocate resources together and then distribute these resources fairly in order to stay alive, survive, and thrive in life. Now, thriving means that you're in a baseline relaxed physiological state. It's not being happy and so on. It's actually a state, as I said, where you are safe and where you can overcome your challenges at the best, with the best chance. So can you see that there's a resilience in action there? It's the knowledge, skills, expertise, experience. Then we allocate resources, which is a challenge. It's always a challenge, right? So we have to be innovative. We have to solve problems. We overcome those challenges. We actually allocate resources. We achieve what we need to achieve. We learn through that. And of course, then we have to distribute it fairly. But you can see that there is a resilience in action there. So if we say we need more resilience today, effectively, it's at the core of doing business. It's also at the core of being well, and that's at the core of actually being alive. So being a high performer today, you need to have that resilience actually well plugged in and well tuned. So I hope this convinces you that this is so critical. Right. So if we need knowledge, skills, expertise, experience, and we need problem solving, the capacity to be innovative, this is actually the brain here. I'm going to show you the brain in my hand. This is the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that solves the problems, the most complex problems. To the back of the brain, here to about there, you have all your memory sites. This is the areas where memory is built, and your knowledge, your skills, and expertise are actually coming from that area. And then we use that knowledge, skills, expertise, experience at the front of our brains to solve these problems. So this wonderful problem machine, innovative machine, high-performing machine wants to be, need a few things. It needs energy, and it needs a lot of yield for the energy, meaning that you need to get a lot of bang for your buck. You need to get a yield energy ratio that's very high, and it needs to plug in with others to achieve that. Okay, I'm gonna actually show you a few things that are nuggets that help us to understand that properly. Let's look at the next slide. I think we're there now. Yes, exactly. You can see this slide says a whole mouthful. You and I consist, to the far left, of molecules that form genes. The genes form these networks, which effectively form cells. And you can see there's a brain cell there and a few other cells. And these cells form organs. And the organs form what we call systems, which actually form you and me in the center there, the organism. And you can see an organism comes from organs, organism. Can you see the link with organization, right? So organism now actually aggregates into larger social networks. And we actually do it very sensibly. It's very well and done, and it's got a very clear intent. You and I aggregate into small groups first. We aggregate into the families and the teams, which is the analogy of each other, one in society and the other one in the place of work. So teams and families are actually small aggregates. Then the larger aggregates are all those teams and families which now form organs, so to speak, of the organization and of society, or the tribe, actually, that then form society, because tribes and organizations all form society, right? So they actually then converge. So let's repeat that. Cells, organs, organisms, you and me, we are the organs of the next team, the family, and those are organs, so to speak, of the organization and that of society. Can you see how this builds? There's a phenomenal way that you and I build different hierarchies of life, which become alive and provides us with a whole that is bigger than the sum of the parts. This is one of the reasons we connect. So we connect downstream to stay alive, to keep us alive and to be stronger and to look after each other. Upstream, we connect so that we can thrive, but to give us high performance. And that high performance actually gives us a whole that is bigger than the sum of the parts, which effectively gives us a high yield energy ratio. And there are specific drivers of each of these hierarchies, of the organism, you and me, of the team, or the family, and of the organization, that we can understand from a brain-body system perspective that has been studied and shown to be the drivers of this process to ensure that you actually have that whole that is bigger than the sum of the parts. Great leadership and great self-leadership ensure that you and I actually get that right, that we have a whole that is bigger than the sum of the parts. And the self-leader, of course, leads the organism, you and me, and the leader leads the team and the organization and so forth. You can see how beautifully this all works together. Okay, so let me just stop there for a second and say something about the way that we actually internalize information. Let's look at the next slide. This is a very interesting one. You see with your eyes, right? Well, the answer is it's wrong. You and I don't see with our eyes. You and I see with our brains. We actually receive information from the outside. Its movement, its shape, it is color. And all of those components then they actually go right to the back of the brain. Here at the back, right? There, when you hit your head, the back of your head against the wall, you see stars, right? Why? Because you really see stars, because you actually activate the visual brain, which is at the back, the so-called occipital lobe. And that brain part is activated. It then takes all that information and it puts it together, it integrates it to make sense of the visual world. And that gives us the pictures. So you and I see with our brains, it makes sense of the world. Of course, technically, you need the eyes, of course, to bring that information in, right? So it's a bit of a technical little statement. But the point is, you and I see what is out there in there. Everything that you experience of the outer world is a representation in your brain, right? That's an important notion. That also means that the way that I internalize information determines my external world, my perception of the world that I live in. So how do we know that we all see the same thing, or we feel the same thing, or we view complex issues, for example, in the same way? Well, we have Sunday roasts, we have coffee shops, we have fireplaces. We sit around the fire and we continue to tell each other how things are, or at least how we believe it should be, because that speaks to culture and that's vision. And what is the core thing that actually plays its part there? It's called values. You and I assign, we value tag every single thing that's out there. We assign a value to colors. Red is danger. Green is you can go. That's a value. We assign a value to, for example, religious thoughts. They might be the highest thoughts in your particular belief system. Or we assign the highest value to family or to work, or you can see how this goes. So the value assignment that we have determines your actions. It also determines what you will learn at night when you learn new things, because your brain will only learn those things that it actually says is of the greatest value. It will learn that preferentially. You can see how important this map is, the map that is valued assigned to it. At the crux of all of that, of course, lies purpose, which is the greatest value, a high value. And then there's vision that aligns us with the future and says, this is what the value should look like. And then there's values. They're all actually a part of a value system. Let's look at the next slide. And you can see to the far right there, your purpose, your vision, your mindset are all actually extremely complex summation of all these sets of values, right? So therefore, it is so critical to actually ensure that you and I, one, understand purpose, and two, that we have a certain vision and then a value system that gives us a mindset that ensures that we actually do the stuff that needs to be done, that puts us in the right way, in the right place, in our best position in the future. Okay, how do we do that? Well, the first of all, when it comes to purpose, we need to understand that you don't have to know that, hey, I'm a singer, I've got to be a singer. No, that's actually a tool, right? Singing is a tool. Purpose is that you are supposed to be here because you are an organ of the next system and the team and the family and of the organization. You're part of that. You're a living, essential component of life. And therefore, I have to be here. So I have purpose. Purpose in life has been shown to enhance well-being significantly, reduce illness. It's a great thing to have, to know that you are so important as a human being, and you don't have to look and fight for your rights to exist. That's a critical thing for a high performer. High performers embrace that. They embody that. And then that's the first thing. The second one is vision. Vision is what's going to happen in the future, what is going to be important in this future that is actually now, because tomorrow is now. What are the most important things that I actually have to believe, and therefore the rest then falls into place? Growth mindset is critical, for example. So people with a great vision will tell you, we can grow, we change. Part of what I'm actually talking to you here is all about the brain that can change continuously. And where are the areas that need to change, and what do I have to do to change that properly so that I can be a high performer? I want to get there, so I'm actually going to move to the next slide. This is a very important nugget. This nugget is the one that says, we do this together. You and I are organically, evolutionarily, completely structured deeply to connect. There is no such thing as the individual brain and the group brain. It is one brain. You and I deeply, intricately connect with each other because that gives us downstream survival, and upstream, as we said, that enables us to actually get a great, great whole that is so much greater than the sum of the parts. But there's a way we do this, and we learn how to do this. And I'm going to share a few thoughts with you. Can you see what these kids are doing there? They are actually playing in the playground. It's seemingly completely chaotic and random. These ones in the far left are basically, they're engineers, they're building. You've got a pilot in the middle there, and you've got the medical fraternity in the far right. What you actually see is that kids who are playing are actually practicing what we call role play. And role play teaches them continuously about the condition of the human being. So they learn about the human being. They have knowledge of being human. Knowledge of being human is what you and I need to, for example, give us a form of empathy. It is not effective empathy. It's called cognitive empathy. The capabilities of allowing somebody else to think in my shoes, meaning that I understand where you're coming from, your perspective, because I understand the human condition, and therefore then I have an attitude that allows you to actually change my perspective, because I can actually see where you're coming from. I allow that. We need a lot of that today, of course, because that helps us to actually come up with phenomenal collective creative thinking. Underneath, you will never get this if you do not actually have a great commonality structure, meaning that you are deeply connected. Teams need bonding. Teams and families, they need entrustment. There's a hormone in the brain that is called oxytocin that is secreted when people actually start to connect entrustfully. They actually entrust themselves to each other. For example, the mother and a child, two lovers connecting deeply and intimately. Men in the war zone, for example, I've got a sword, you've got a sword. You've got to cover my back because I can't cover my back, and I can cover yours. So we actually fight back to back. If you're dead, I'm dead, right? That is entrustment. That's what bonding is. So bonding as entrustment is critical for small groups to actually ensure that you have this wonderful way of using your cognitive empathy, your capacity for problem solving. That's called bonding in small groups. And it's in a different part of the brain than where belonging happens. Bonding and belonging is not the same. Belonging is dopamine. It's the hormone, the neurotransmitter that is secreted when you actually achieve stuff. Yes, And that part of the brain enables us to belong. Can you see that those two are different? So belonging drives organizations, the bigger groups, organizations and society. That's where we actually share those values and so forth. Speaks to culture and bonding in teams. How big is a team that works well? Somewhere between 5 and 8. So it's like a family. It's been well shown in research. So if you have a team that consists of 20 people, ensure you huddle. Smaller groups have huddles where there's entrustment. Find ways of doing that. It's a very valuable thing for your leadership and for your performance, for your collective performance. Next slide. So connect to leverage the diversity of the group. That's what we actually just spoke to, right? So that cognitive empathy and other forms of empathy and psychological safety, that everybody is important. You can only utilize that if you're well connected. So connection is a critical nugget in this process. The next slide, the next nugget, speaks a bit to this, and I'm going to be very quick on this one. This is the combustion process. This is a very simple combustion process that actually follows the same rules or describes fuel burning, wood burning in the fireplace, food burning in your body. You and I actually eat food that actually looks like complex structures. It's all broken up in the system and it goes to the cells and it waits. And then you and I breathe in oxygen, goes through the red blood cells to those cells. And then the oxygen connects with those nutrients and it burns it up, right? And you have, the result is carbon dioxide that you breathe out. There you can see it, CO2, and water, H2O, that you actually, of course, you know where that goes, right? And then you have an additional important product that is energy. And the energy gives you the heat, 36.8 degrees, your body, and then the rest of it is packaged into something called ATP. There are others as well, but it's called adenotriphosphate. That's the energy packets of the body. And you and I can do what we want. Let's have a look at the next slide. Do what you want. Energy is finite. If you have more energy available, what do? Well, you basically store it in fat, right? So energy is finite. Energy is finite in your body. Let's have a look at the next line. While the sky is the limit, energy is finite. So everything is possible. There's optimism. There's a collectiveness around that. That doesn't speak to energy. Energy is finite. If you look at the next slide, this are important components, things that you and I can do. And we'll send you the slides. So everything is going to be sent to you. Will it be made available? I suppose. But let me just leave it there for a moment. Have a look at this before I speak about something I don't know. These are things that you can pay attention to enhance the availability of that finite amount of energy. Because while your energy is finite, you also have a system that anticipates reward. It's called the reward system. And that's done through dopamine. And if you have a system that is well looked after, you can anticipate high rewards. That's all unconscious, by the way, unconscious. And the better your system is prepared for that, the higher you can unconsciously anticipate rewards and the higher your achievement can be. So the energy system is critical. Well, it's finite. You want to optimize it. So what are the negative ones? The leakers, chronic stress. You can see it there. What are the blockers? Oh, negative intrusive thought patterns. Have you heard what so-and-so said again? I hate my boss. Destructive habits. Let's not talk about that any further. Addictions. They are the worst. And then, of course, a low mood state. So those are components that actually block areas, things that block the amount of dopamine, and therefore your goal achievement is not as high as it should be. The good news is if you stamp that out, and you put these boosters in place, which have been well shown to enhance the dopamine secretion and therefore your unconscious high performance. Optimism, this too shall pass. Gratitude, think about the 3 things that you have that you are grateful for yesterday and today. Just continue to think about that, the gratitude for that. Enthusiasm, bring that person into your team who's the enthusiast. Humor, incredibly important. Curiosity. Those are important boosters of the energy system. And so you can have very high energy available. And then, of course, when you connect well in the system, you should be able now to actually have a very high yield energy system. And that's what you're looking for as a high performer, right? That is the state where the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. Let's have a look at another slide, the next one. Okay, so we just spoke about that. And now I'm going to share another nugget with you. These 2 are important nuggets. And this is the problem-solving machine. We're almost done. and then we can actually put it all together. You are as innovative as what you know. That's the first important thing. So learning is critical. The neuroscience today are quite clear about it. You don't come up with something new that has not been in your brain. It's just new because it's so newly put together with things that are there. So the building blocks of innovation is knowledge, and it comes from learning. You must continue to learn as much as you can if you want to be as innovative as possible. That's the first important thing. That goes through that hippocampus there. Can you see it says hippocampus? Hippocampus is where memories are made. And you can grow those brain cells to actually learn much quicker. I'll show you now in a sec. The other thing you actually want to grow is this prefrontal cortex here. You see prefrontal cortex to the far left there on that screen. This piece is your prefrontal cortex. This is where you solve the most complex problems with. You can also grow that part of your brain. And I'll show you that too. The good news is that you can grow this part of the brain and this hippocampus. Can you see knowledge and problem solving? There's resilience in action, high performance. You can grow that. The one I didn't speak to yet is the amygdala. Do you see the amygdala to the bottom left? The amygdalas are the emotional seats of the brain body system. It sort of looks out for what is dangerous. It's very important to keep you alive. But if you are chronically stressed, the amygdala start to overgrow, and it makes these snapshot decisions, irritable and so forth. It sort of cuts off the effects of this wonderful prefrontal cortex hippocampus axis. So chronic stress can actually grow the cells in the amygdala. You want them to be attenuated. The good news is there are rhythms that you can follow that actually enhances the prefrontal cortex growth, the hippocampus growth, and the amygdalas. Let's for a moment go there so we can have a look at that. I'm going to just ask you to just, Tammy, just go to the next, just go to the next one. Quickly, you are born with all your neurons, the neurons in the brain. That's the electrically active brains cells. Now you're going to add other cells, but the neurons are already there. It's just a fascinating little thing. I'm not going to speak to that now, but let me show you the neuron. There is a neuron, the blue one. Okay, so that's the one with all the connections. It looks like something has been uprooted out of the ground, and it connects. There are actually 100 billion of these neurons, actually 86, but let's stick to 100 billion. They make between 100,000 and 40,000 connections with each other. So you talk about 10,000 times 100 billion connections, and they can fire it 100 times a second. It's an incredible amount of calculations that you can make, and it's vastly unconscious. But do you see the circuit? But I want you to actually look at this is, what are those pieces of cereal there? Can you see those little, it looks like cereal that's sort of stuck in between those cells there. Those are called growth factors, and they are secreted by your brain cells to actually grow those brain cells. It can grow the connections, strengthen the connections, and it can grow new brain cells, so-called neurogenesis. If you know what to do to grow the brain in the right places, that's called the prefrontal cortex, the problem-solving part, and the memory part, and you can reduce the growth in the amygdalas, the snapshot decision makers, you've done a very smart thing for your brain. Let's go to the next slide and see. So actually, we've already spoken about this one. So what are these things you can do? The healthy rhythms. They are a few, and I'm going to just mention them to you. You know them, but I bet that these are the ones that if you just remember that they actually grow the brain in the right places and then attenuates the snapshot decision makers in the wrong places, and then therefore keeps you out of chronic stress and ensures that your brain is, while it's not connected with everybody and others and is rightly connected and it's ready to perform its best, it's now optimized. Right. Sleep 7 to 9 hours a night for 99% of us. If you are a short or long sleeper, you must be able to sleep 5 hours every night, year in, year out, and you actually have got no problems. And there are very few of us who can do that. The story that presidents of the US sleep less than 5 hours and they're fine, it's probably just nonsense. It's myths. You and I need to sleep 7 to 9 hours because the brain needs to clean itself from toxins, and it opens little gutters at night and clean those toxins out in the so-called glymphatic system. And it needs about 8 hours to do it properly. That's just one reason why we need that amount of sleep. But you also need to go through the cycles of sleep so you can solve the problems, your most complex problems, and you can learn properly. So learning and problem solving, once again, resilience in action is that it happens at night. And especially in the latter part of the night, when you and I are a bit more wakeful, it's a lighter sleep. That's why most of us, when we are stressed or older, or we had too much alcohol last night, or we had too much fatty food and so on, wake up after 4 or 5 hours, and we don't sleep that last 2, 3, 4 hours, where we really need a lot of so-called REM sleep that enhances the problem solving and enhances the learning. Can you see how important that is? That's one that can actually really improve that growth factor secretion. Another one, high intensity interval training. If you don't have time to exercise for an hour, go for 10 minutes. Get on that treadmill or the cycle or whatever you do, right? Or heavy weights. Please see your doctor before you do that. I'm not the doctor who's going to approve that for you. You, of course, need somebody who can do it formally. But if you can do it well, you actually push up your heart rate to about, let's say, over 75% of your maximum heart rate, which is 220 minus your age if you're a man, and 210 minus your age if you're a woman. And so that's the kind of exercise you want to do, high intensity interval training for a minute or two, 3 or 4 times in that 10 minutes. And you've done a wonderful thing for your brain. You've secreted that insulin growth factors and human growth hormone, and these are all just names. But what happens is, looking at that small little section there, the picture, is you grow those brain cells in the hippocampus where you remember better, and the problem-solving machine. That's high-intensity interval training. Intermittent fasting, similar thing. It also reduces inflammation in your body. So every now and then, try to actually fast for a day if you're not a diabetic, right? If you can do it. Or a number of times, even maybe even a few days a week, try to do what we call periodic calorie restriction. So you want to do it like, you just don't eat it at night for a few days a week. It's not easy, but that's the kind of thing that also gets this going. And then the last one is practice mindfulness. It's been well shown that you grow these brain cells in the right places if you practice mindfulness. How does it work? It starts with deep breathing. Deep breathing means if you put your hand on your chest and hand on your tummy, you can do it where you're sitting. Just take a few breaths. Deep breaths should actually move the hand on your tummy out, and on your chest it just remains slight. This is a slight movement. Your lungs are down at the bottom. It's built like that. Your diaphragm has to go down and your tummy goes out when you practice deep breathing. That leads you into a baseline relaxed physiological state. Remember, we talked about that. And then after a few minutes, you can close your eyes and try to think of nothing. Is it possible? Yes. Is it hard? Absolutely. Who of you started to run a marathon by running the marathon? Nobody does that, unless you're crazy. You start to run around the block. You actually walk, but then you take a jog. Then you go further and further. It's exactly the same with mindfulness practicing. Please practice that. You can practice this mindfulness so you can silence your mind daily for 15 minutes when you wake up and nobody bothers you. If you do this well, on the day, you already have all these advantages of this kind of practicing, this mindfulness practice. It reduces the clutter. It gives you more to work with, more problems you can solve with more sophisticated information. It grows the brain, and it does something else. It helps you to have that understanding of allowing things to self-organize, which takes me to the next slide, and we're almost done. I'm back to the slide. I want to leave a last nugget with you, and it goes like this. Work hard so that you can self-organize. And I'm saying this because it's it's a bit of an ironic, contradictory term, isn't it? How do you work hard to self-organize? Well, self-organize is like so effortless. If you work hard on the right things, the things we just spoke about, and you build a critical mass of these things for you and your team, and that's hard work, you will self-organize into a team and a machine that works at a high yield energy ratio. We are built that way. That makes us truly biological. Computers don't do that. We can do it. That's what biological systems do, and biological intelligence can do together. Work hard on that. You'll get it right. And that becomes an incredible weapon in your arsenal. Of course, you have to have systems and knowledge and skills and everything else, which you also will work hard on, but your system can do it so much easier and so much better. And I hope that helps to actually just put these two horses in the cart. The two horses that says you work hard to self-organize, then you self-organize, but you also actually have systems in place and discipline, etc. All right, so I think we are at the end of of this process, and there you can see just everything we just spoke about in a nutshell. Those are the 5 high-performance domains we spoke about: the transformer system, the connector system, the energy, the innovators, and the rhythms. Well, I wish you all of the best for 2025. I hope that you can actually grow and that you thrive. What is that? Already thrive. This is the crux of the physiology of thriving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Etienne. I hope I was okay with driving your slides there. It was the most stressful thing I've done in a while. Luckily, I had my 7 hours sleep last night.
That was absolutely perfect. Thank you.
I just want to check if we've got some questions for you. If you don't mind, we've got about 3 minutes left, so maybe we can just have a few. So it's just loading on my side. Thank you so much for the presentation. Okay, there's just people saying thank you. Excellent. Love the presentation. Yeah, okay, so we've got one from Remington. I'm failing to formulate the question about seeing through the brain, seeing thorough through the brain, the conduit of eyes for people that are blind. Please answer anyway.
Yes. Very quickly. So remember that people who are blind, if they're born blind, the other areas of the senses actually take over that part. So that people who are born blind have got a very different way of making sense of the world than you and me. And they've got a more acuity around other senses that gives them a capability of making sense of the external world, because we have to make sense of the external world, compare it with a map that says this is safe and this is not safe. And then we have to be actually guided through the world safely. That's sort of why we use that feedback feed-forward system. If you are not born blind, but you become blind, then of course that's another challenge. And you have to, but once again, the brain has got this wonderful way of growing and plasticity to take over some of that areas. However, you still make an internal representation of what is out there. So I think just to cover that piece, I use the eyes as an example. But what I'm actually trying to say is that you and I make internal representations of what is out there with our senses, smell, hearing, etc. And that happens in the brain, and it is not actually what's going on in the outside more than it is what is going on in our internal representation of that. If it's very wrong, then of course you have hallucinations. You see the psychiatrist, right? You're seeing stuff that's not there. You smell. That's what I'm trying to actually get to. But I hope that's just covered.
Yeah, so it's even about the feeling that you feel in that moment, all that creates that, and not only the visual. Then Belinda's asking, does neuro art help?
Neural art, yes. I think look, there are many different practices that helps us to and different forms of creative practice that can help us. I hope I understand you correctly. That actually helps us to enhance our capabilities of having more dots to connect, because that's important, right? You want to have as many potential dots to connect, and then you want to have mindfulness to reduce the clutter. Now, there are different forms of mindfulness training as well that helps us to build more mindfulness, but some of them are actually better than others. What I gave you is the most crude thing. This is actually for your best outcome. There are other forms of mindfulness practice. Even walking in nature and being in nature and just being immersed in it can give you a form of mindfulness training and enhance your capability of decluttering and looking at the dots, connecting the dots that are important.
Good, thanks, Etienne. Trisha's asking about the presentation. If it's okay with Etienne, we will PDF the presentation and send it through to everyone. And you guys can work through it. And then, yes, Etienne, just amazing feedback, and everyone's saying they can't wait to implement it and try it out. And yes, definitely amazing learning. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And good for, keeping in mind for the rest of the year and making sure that we maybe revisit this again towards the latter part of the year, because sometimes we do forget when we get a bit crazy and have some quiet time. Everyone just saying thank you. So Etienne, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And thank you for being comfortable with presenting from your phone and making sure that we make it work. We really appreciate it.
That's resilience in action, Tammy. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you for staying calm as well, and everybody, and all of the best for 2025.
Thank you so much, and same to you. Cheers, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye-bye.